Before I start introductions with our panelists here, I do want to go over a few things. And so let's start. So for our agenda for today, I have a few announcements, then we're going to go into introductions, then the panel discussion, and then any closing remarks. And we do have a raffle, so I hope you all get to stay. Topics that we're gonna cover are just overall like the passion that these students have towards financial wellness, financial stressors if they're comfortable sharing, how to establish financial boundaries, and how to achieve financial goals. And then, as you know, this panel is part of the Financial Literacy Conference that started on Monday, April 1st, and it will continue all the way to Thursday, April 4th. And later on in this slide, there will be an overview of all the other events. So huge thank you to all of our partners as well, all sponsors. So we do appreciate all the gifts that they've been giving us. And then again, we do have a few surveys. So if these apply to you, please let us know if there are any students here about your summer experience, if you already secured an internship or not. And if not, again, the USC Career Center is here to support you. And we also want to know about our postgraduate, those who are graduating, any plans that they have. Again, we're trying to see how we could best support our students. All right, then. So we're going to get started with introductions. So I'll hand it over to Kerry.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kerry Yoon. I use he, him, his pronouns. And some identities that I think have impacted my financial journey have been, obviously, I'm a first-generation student, so the first person in my family to graduate from college. And I also grew up outside of the US my whole life before coming to USC. So I think that was also something that really impacted my financial journey so far. And then I'll pass it off to Antoinette.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Antoinette. I am a grad student here at Rossier School of Education. I'm an educational counseling student. And my identities are also first generation, as first my family to graduate from college. I am also an educator. I work in K through 12, specifically middle school. I teach social studies. And I come from a working class background. So a lot of the financial literacy that I have gained has been fairly recent, and it's a lifelong process. So thank you for having me. I will pass it to Celine.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Celine, and I am a PDP student at UC Gould. So if anyone's interested in the Master's of Study in Law program, I am your girl, and I would love to talk about it, or even PDP. But some of the identities that really have impacted my financial journey is my first-generation college background. I come from a low-income family, and I heavily identify with my Filipino-American heritage. So yeah, thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to speaking to y'all. I'll go ahead and pass it on to Antonio.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Antonio Acosta. My preferred pronouns are he, him. And the identities that have impacted my financial journey would have to be, like everyone else said, first generation college student, part of the Latinx community, and veteran community as well. But most importantly, as a father, right? I know that's definitely impacted me most than anything else. And I will pass it on to Nettie.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Nettie. My preferred pronouns are she, hers, and an identity that I feel like shapes a lot of my financial journey is being a first-gen college student, but also being an out-of-state student. Yeah, that's pretty much me. Thank you for joining this webinar today.
All right, so we're gonna get to the first question. So why are you interested or passionate about financial readiness or wellness? And we're gonna start off with Celine.
So actually, what really gave me the passion to be, to really involve myself with my own finances is that being financially literate really provides you the privilege of dreaming. And I want to be able to have, the ability to dream about the things I will eventually afford to have. Connecting back to my low income background, I have dreams of being able to own a residence for my family and I. So, yeah, that's like just to start us off.
Yeah, so I'm interested and or passionate about financial readiness and wellness. It all had to do because I remember there was a fall down in my life where um money really wasn't making sense coming from my background. All they knew was spending, and um and then it really changed when I became a father. Then I had to prioritize things. I had to really be a little bit more conservative with what I have. So that really drove me to self-knowledge, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I'm gonna pass it on to Antoinette.
Thank you. So my sort of drive to gain financial literacy really came from watching my parents growing up. Being from a working class background, you really see how things are done, how money is managed, and I was really inspired by them to do better for myself and for our next generation. And so you really learn the importance of not only budgeting, but also planning long term and the resources that my parents may not have had, gaining those and really utilizing them to the best of my ability. I will pass it to Kerry.
I think the main thing that made me interested about financial readiness was the fact that it opens up a lot of time to explore like my passions and my dreams. I feel like my goal is like if I have I'm set financially, I have that comfortableness and like that privilege to like kind of try new things. So I think that's why I'm interested about this. And also because it's also a part of like it's a kind of health. So like same thing of going to the gym or like taking care of your mental health. I think financial health is something that we also need to take care of.
I could finish off the question. For me specifically, I began to become interested in financial readiness when I like during COVID, my friend like put me on to like the best YouTubers and it was all free education. So for me, it's been ever since that. And then I've always kind of when I came out to USC, I no longer had the ability to see my family consistently because I was like across the country from them. I'm from New York. So to me, it like started as I stepped foot in LA. It was just trying to learn how to balance, how to afford a plane ticket back home. So for me, it's more also being able to connect with my family is another one. And I'm also interested in just like learning so I could get back to my community and the people that raised me. So that's kind of why I continue and I'm super interested in financial readiness. But thank you for that question.
Thank you. So I do hear a lot of like, I could start off with dreams or just becoming a parent, or it could be a lifestyle. And with that in mind, our next question is, as you began your financial wellness journey, how do you feel about talking about money? Like, was there any like feelings of uncomfortableness or was it like something good? And I will start off with Nettie here.
Yes, thank you. Initially when I first started getting into like financial readiness, I felt a bit not uncomfortable, but I felt a little bit weird just because my peers or surrounding community weren't really speaking about money. And when I was very excited to share any knowledge, it kind of seemed like I was trying to brag or just like it could be a lot to just share information that is sometimes like gate kept or like it's gatekept from a community. So I think oftentimes I kind of struggle with trying to promote certain things that aren't really like talked about because you don't want to come off like you're trying to push ideas. But ultimately now I think I take pride in being uncomfortable. I think a lot of times you grow out of uncomfortable situations. So I think like I used to feel uncomfortable. I don't as much. I think money should be spoken about much more than it is, but that's pretty much my journey to talking about money, and I'd like to pass it on to Celine.
Hi, so for me, similar to how Nettie felt, I also felt really uncomfortable, but I also felt really intimidated by the idea of, money in general. So when I gained the privilege of being able to earn my own money, I started to feel really scared about holding it because I always had like this scarce mindset where I could not spend this money. Like this is the only time I would be able to actually earn money. Like this is the only money that I had. But gaining more, I guess, knowledge with financial wellness and just understanding that I don't need to give power to money. I have control, and I didn't want to put it at such a high pedestal in my life because if I continued to do that, then I would continue the cycle that my family unfortunately always fell into. So, with that being said, I did feel really uncomfortable with it, but I didn't want to be ashamed of my low income background. My low income background does not define me, and it will not define my future generations. So, now I feel more comfortable. I'm okay with learning from my peers about, hey, what credit card do y'all use? And if they're not really sure about it, that's okay. We're here to learn together. So it takes a lot to start the conversation, but familiarizing yourself with that conversation really does help, and it has helped me a lot. I'm gonna go ahead and pass on to Kerry.
Thank you. I think for me, at first it was a little difficult just because I used to think about money as like a thing of comparison. So if I ever did bring it up to someone, it would be myself that would try to compare my situation with someone else's, or the other way around. I was worried that someone else would compare kind of what they have compared to like what I might have. And I hear a lot like comparison is the thief of joy. But I think the more I started learning about it and the more passionate I became about it, I think it became a lot easier and like a lot more encouraging for me, because even if I felt that I was behind, I think that having conversations with people that know more has been like extremely valuable for me, because not only am I learning about other ways that I could potentially be like helping myself, but like I can spread that knowledge too. And I'll pass it on to Antonio.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So as I began my financial awareness journey, I felt really comfortable talking about it, although, it wasn't the norm in my family. I felt very comfortable talking about it because it was so, I was so curious about it. Everything about it is like, man, this like pretty much runs our life. Like, why is it that I don't know anything about it? So it made me that like on the first question, that's where the passion came, and it made me seek out knowledge, read my own books, just do everything my parents didn't have the opportunity to do. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much how I felt about money and how I still feel about money to this day. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over on to Antoinette.
Thank you. I remember getting my first credit card in the mail quite a few years back and watching it come in a big fat envelope and seeing all the terms and conditions and getting a little intimidated and overwhelmed over interest rates and payment dates and all that. So I understand with the privilege of having money comes great responsibility. And that definitely took a while to learn and really internalize. And it's a journey. And sometimes, especially for me, I felt like there was so much I didn't know. And it was really hard to wrap my head around some of these financial concepts, especially when we talk about building a future and really wanting that stability that a lot of first generation students do not have. So it's a lot of reminding yourself to take one day at a time and to really access the resources that we have, especially on campus. just to gain a better understanding of what we ourselves can do today to build up those healthy financial habits.
You. Yeah, so I hear a lot of mixed feelings. So from like being bragged, feeling shame, comparison, but then it felt good. It felt comfortable. So I really appreciate that. There's certain people in my family where I can't talk about it, but there's some where I'm like, I won't shut up. And I know they don't like to hear it, but definitely appreciate all of your input. So now moving on to the third question. If you are comfortable sharing, what have been some of your financial stressors as a student? And I'll start off with Antonio here.
Yeah, so some of my financial stressors as a student, honestly, I'm still learning how to budget, but as well as I also want my family to enjoy and have fun and things of that nature. Some of my financial stressors would be sometimes, man, I need gas for my car. And I'm like, man, I didn't plan this. Or, I need food. I found out, I'm like, oh, wow, I need some food. So that's why it's been very helpful to have like the student pantry that we have, that I do take advantage of that when I can. But I would say those are the two main stressors for me. Um, yeah, thank you.
I can go ahead and answer next. For me, some of the financial stressors I have as a student, honestly, is knowing that, especially it's actually about food. So, if y'all know, it's really expensive to buy food in Los Angeles. So when I do buy food in Los Angeles, I always feel the need that I have to finish my entire like plate because I don't want to waste a penny. And usually when I do buy food outside, it's because I'm treating myself. But in the back of my head, it's like, oh, wow, this meal costed me $20, $22, and this is like a basic brunch at like a local cafe around the area. So it's always me thinking that, should I have bought this food? And or if I did buy this food, am I actually making the most of the cost that I just spent? So similar to also to Antonio, the basic food pantry has been such a great resource for me. And I also have the privilege of being able to apply for CalFresh, which is an available resource for me. So I feel like food really is a really big conversation for a lot of first-gen students who do face food insecurity. So if there's anything that I can, provide as affirmation, we got this, y'all. We can do this.
Antoinette, would you like to go next?
Yes, I could go next. A financial stressor I've had as a student has really been kind of like on the working side. I work around like 20 hours most weeks at my like part-time job, but not only do I work, but I have a huge load of extracurriculars that I also am involved in. So for me, it's kind of hard to still have a social life that many times like people can be kind of hard to balance in college. I think it's like always being busy is something that I realized that I have had to face this at least my junior year. And another like stressor that is very, very important because I feel like oftentimes when you are not only a student but a student worker, you forget that like you're a student before you're a worker. So my days are really packed usually, and by the time I'm done with school and work and extracurriculars, I most time like don't have the energy or brain power to, study, which is like really bad to admit, but I think oftentimes we can forget that everything we're involved in requires so much energy from us. But those two have been my main financial stressors, and I too use CalFresh, so that has been such a plus. But along with working for such huge hours, like if you don't cook, then you're going through your head and you're like, I don't really want to spend like $20 on a meal, so let me wait. And then it's just like it's a cycle of like there's always like little like ties that are connected, but ultimately it's pretty hard to balance like everything being a student worker. So that's my opinion of what has been a financial stressor. I could pass it on to Antoinette.
Thank you. I think Celine touched on this pretty well. The cost of living in Los Angeles is very high, and that really makes you have to make some very tough decisions about your spending, especially when you don't have a lot to begin with. Budgeting your money, especially if you do receive a paycheck, and you have, tuition to pay and also personal expenses. That's when it gets really tricky. Deciding what is a need, what is an immediate need versus a future need, and really trying your best to anticipate any costs that could come up. That's where it gets, I would say, a little intimidating at times, but also understanding that you are in a position where you are learning these skills now rather than later, and taking those skills with you as you build up your financial background. That to me is really important, and it's almost a blessing to be learning this now rather than down the line.
Thank you, Antoinette. But yeah, just echoing, food insecurity is big here at USC, and just based on the survey that I conducted earlier this month. But definitely take advantage of the student basic needs. They're awesome. But yeah, and it's also okay to say no or to ask for like a different location that might have, less expensive food meals, things like that, whenever you're trying to have fun. But again, some of you mentioned a few of your identities, whether it was first gen, being a parent and whatnot. If you guys can, please, can you share a little bit more about how have your identities impacted your financial journey? And I will start off with Kerry here.
Yeah, so I can talk about my kind of how I grew up and the fact that I didn't live in the US till I first came to college. I think that was an adjustment for me because prior to coming to the US, like I didn't know what the credit score was. I didn't know how a credit card worked. I didn't know like what a stock was and like, what investing meant, and like, all these things were just very foreign to me, especially coming to the US. And I'm like kind of scared of the law too. So like seeing what is legal, what isn't, and like trying to just figure out how to do all that stuff by myself, especially just because I don't have any family in the US. Like it took a little bit of adjusting and a little bit of like a lot of self-exploration and like trying things out for myself, and just being responsible too. So I think in that sense, growing up, that was one of my identities. And then shortly, I think the major I chose in college, since I'm majoring in business and accounting, I think that really opened up my eyes to, money is like an inevitable facet of life. Rather than running away from it, we should kind of learn how to make it work for us. So that's another thing that I think really pushed me to like start learning more and like talk to my peers as well, just because they're also business majors and accounting majors, and they also know a lot about this topic.
Yeah, so as I said in the beginning, being a first generation you know, Latino in my family, they don't really they never talked about money, what it was, right? You're too young for it, or I don't know. I got a lot of things. And I kind of resonated with what Kerry was saying because when I first went into college, uh, I remember financial aid, right? They give you a bunch of loans, right? Credit card, all that. All that was brand new to me. And I'm like, hey, that's free money right there. and later to find out it wasn't, right? I went like crazy, and I've worked and I've learned a lot since then, you know, to better myself in my financial journey. And that's, I would want to say that's where it kind of started. And I was like, man, so that's a little bit about how my identity impacted my financial journey. Yeah.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, growing up as first generation, you gain a lot of cultural capital by learning things alongside your parents, specifically things like doing taxes. So from a young age, you kind of have that awareness of your parents are learning this for the first time, and you're kind of there to supplement or help in any way possible. So I remember my parents were buying their first home, learning about mortgage rates and the whole process of escrow, and understanding all of those financial literacy points. That was just so impactful at the time, and it is today, even though I don't plan on buying a home anytime soon. But having those tools and those resources kind of in the back of your head, that has definitely impacted the way I see money and how I make decisions regarding what I can afford.
I think similar to everyone, as a first-gen student, like, and especially attending USC, I guess like a challenge have been like being the first one, or like when I first opened my credit card, I didn't have like a guarantor. Is that what it's called? A guarantor? Someone, a parent to back up my credit, just because my parents didn't have or don't have the best credit. So for me, it was like starting from ground zero and like actually being proactive in myself and being, when I turn 18, I'm gonna make sure I have to do this. But also not only that, but I noticed like specifically as I enter spaces on at USC, I'll be in rooms with peers my year or a year below me, and they will be speaking about like retirement funds, and most of the times their parents are contributing to the retirement fund, or they're aware of like even how to invest in a retirement fund. So I think for me, it feels a lot of like catching up to do, but I think like even like one small thing is so much more than like not knowing. Like you don't have to put that, at least I believe, like there's no need to put a pressure on you that you have to be like X, Y, and Z like your other peer, as long as you're doing what works for you. And like learning one thing is so much more like than not knowing what you didn't know yesterday. So I think for me, it's just reminding myself that. But there are specifically times where I'll go into rooms and I won't know what people are trying to say, but that specifically is a financial barrier, playing catch up with certain peers at USC. But yeah.
For me, my identities have really inspired me to want to overcome generational poverty and break the cycle that really kept my family in our income bracket. So, connecting back to my low income background, low income background and my Filipino heritage, there is a certain mentality that comes with being a Filipino kid and having Filipino parents. And in our culture, it is always the kid's responsibility to essentially be your parents' like retirement fund, or even to financially support your entire family once you reach a certain age, and or even like once you graduate from college. It is your whole purpose in your life within Filipino culture. And it made me, like, growing up, I used to think that's okay, that's normal, that's what good kids are for. But as I grew older, as I started to, understand more about the importance of finances in terms of like what kind of access that provides you. So similar to like Nettie, opening up a credit card, or even just signing a lease around USC as a student, a lot of these places are asking for people who could serve as guarantors. And, it's really hard to do that if, let's say, my parents doesn't have a credit score, or if they don't even have a credit score, or sorry, not have a credit score or don't have a good credit score. So it's situations like that that really reminded me how important it is for me to not continue that cycle, and how important it is for me to be the one to break off for it. Because while they may not understand why I'm doing this now, I know it can benefit all of us in the long run. And so with that being said, I'm still super proud of my upbringing and my background, but I have used it as inspiration to make better financial choices for myself. And even if that comes with them never understanding, and they'll come around, and that's okay. But this is not just for me. This is also for those that I love.
Thank you, Celine. All right, so moving on to the next question. What have been some challenges when breaking financial barriers? I know some of you mentioned like having fun could be sometimes hard. But yeah, Antonio, would you like to start us off with this one?
Yeah, of course. Some challenges when breaking financial barriers. You know, budgets are set for a reason, right? And I don't know about anyone else, but I tend to go out of my budget almost all the time. And that leads me to think, man, what is my money mindset, right? Why is it that I do the things that I do? And with that, that's been one of the most challenging things for me, is getting myself into prioritizing what I need versus what I want, right? And yeah, that's just about it. Thank you.
Celine, will you be able to answer next?
Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking about that question. For me, my biggest challenge is explaining to my parents that I can't continue with that cycle, that I am accepting that, I may be the last generation who will depend on my kids to be my retirement fund. And having conversations with them about our finances. And it's really weird to be a kid and have a conversation with your parents, or really teach them about the finances. The money system in different countries is completely different. The US is different in the sense that they have a credit score that they will never ever actually explain to you how it actually works. Like, how do I lose 7 points for paying on time? They'll never explain that to you. But it does have such a big influence on the success of, how our life goes, unfortunately. But it's a really hard conversation to have. And those are like really my biggest challenge whenever it comes to my financial readiness and my financial wellness. But similar to what Antonio said, it's prioritizing what it is that you need and what it is that you want. I want my parents to be financially free, but what I need is for them to understand me first. So I don't say maybe too late for them to be financially free, but I don't want to say that, but I do know it's not too late for them to understand the decisions that I'm making, because I have so much in front of me, like there are so many opportunities for us to all grow financially, and for us to really deepen our knowledge with finances. So it is a challenge, but I'm optimistic. And, I hope that is something that everyone can really take in for today, that like finances is going to be a scary thing, and it'll always be something super sensitive, no matter who you speak with it to. But once you shift your mentality and into understanding that, it's only scary because there's not enough conversation about it, and it's also just because we don't know too much about it. You'll start to see that it was not always that scary. It's just something we don't know yet, and when we don't know something, we just end up being scared. So yeah.
I think for me, like some challenges when like breaking financial barriers or is like trial and error. Specifically for me, when I got my first credit card, I was trying to keep up with like, the college experience, being able to do as much as my friends or I didn't really know how to budget. I myself too was going over my budget. I still go over my budget. So I think for me, like some challenges is like choosing where I want to not invest my money, but choosing where I want to splurge on myself. So for example, like I guess like realizing that I can't do everything with my part-time job because I do have to pay for rent. But I think for me like a major challenge has been just like giving myself grace. Like I do think if this is your first time, especially as like immigrant children, like dealing with financial stressors like finance, you are going to mess up, but it's okay. Everyone messes up. It's just honestly trial and error. I've messed up. I've gotten into debt to try to keep up, try to go to concerts. But I think honestly, just giving yourself grace helps me at least when I've had trouble breaking those financial barriers. I can pass it along to Kerry.
Yeah, I think similar to Nettie, my problem is always balancing now and me 30, 40 years from now. So even now, like I'm saving money, right? And I'm trying to invest it, put it in all these different tax deferred accounts. But I'm like, I can't touch this money realistically till I'm 60. So in my head, I'm like, is it even worth it investing all this money? Like, someday I'm gonna have access to it, but it's so far away, or should I just enjoy now and use that to like, have certain experiences that I could be having. So I think that balance is still something that I'm trying to work on, but it's helped a lot to budget and to be like, I can set this money and forget it. And also have like my fun spending, and that's I think where budgeting comes in. And if you have a set budget and you know that you have this money to do stuff, like you should just go and do it. So that's kind of how I'm trying to also give myself grace. But yeah.
I echo everyone when they talked about budget. It's a very tricky thing because you also want to live your life and have these experiences while you can, especially when the opportunity arises. And then you look at your budget, you wonder, well, if I do it, then what else what else can I take out? Or what else can I save on? And that is really the tricky thing of it all. Also, depending on your social situations, money may or may not be talked about. Financial literacy or savings or even tips on how to get ahead. We don't always talk about that freely with the people around us, and I think as somebody said before, that needs to be done more, especially in different cultural contexts. When we talk about being financially independent, we usually think of just ourselves, but the reality is it's not always just about us. There's a lot of other factors, like Celine said, family, that come into play when it comes into financial planning. And all of that is so important to take into consideration and just really do the best you can. At the end of the day, it's not about being perfect, but just understanding the constraints that you have. And also, as a first generation student, there isn't much of a safety net for you. So every decision you make is that much more impactful. And so, but keeping all that in mind, not putting so much pressure on yourself to be perfect and to meet your budget every single month, but understanding the decisions that you make and why you make them. I think that will go a long way.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move away from challenges into something more positive. So I do want to hear from all of you. What are some of your financial goals or priorities? How do you stay motivated to reach these goals? And I'll start off with Celine.
So for me, I'm also viewing the Q&A. So I feel like this will answer some of y'all's question about like what are my budgeting strategies. So for me to meet my financial goals and priorities, honestly, as I mentioned in the start, like what is something that you dream of, right? And I write down those dreams, and that's how I create my Excel sheet. I really like Excel sheets, y'all. That's what works for me. There is no right way to really look at your finances. Just find something that makes it work. For me, it works to make Excel sheets, just because I can type out like, okay, what are my actual financial responsibilities? So that could be as literal as literally, what are my subscriptions? So for me, it's Spotify. I have to account for that. I have Amazon Prime. I have I know we get I get Hulu with Spotify. So, like, what are the expenses that I should expect every single month? Just starting off with that. And how much is that in total? So that I can already in my mind know that when I receive my paycheck, this is a part of this will go to this specific responsibility. And then also just knowing, like seeing it right in front of you about what kind of costs are coming in and out helps me visualize, is this something that I want or is this something that I need? Next to that, connecting back to my dreams, this is what helps me budget out for my savings. What is something that I really want to be able to, achieve? If that is literally like, I want to be able to eat at this restaurant, and it's like 5-star Michelin or 5 Michelin stars, and it's like 4 like dollar signs on Yelp. So that means, this is not a simple $20 meal. We have to, acknowledge the price of this. So, just putting in small, tiny amounts. And y'all, tiny amounts go a really long way. And I actually want to, bring that to investing. A lot of people, like they hear this, they're like, what is investing? How do I even start? We can start, I can just say like, find whatever works, like a brokerage, that could, I was about to say, do y'all remember that one site where GameStop was like, do y'all know what I'm talking about? The site?
Reddit?
No, not on Reddit. That's where it started on, like the platform that they used. But
Was it Robinhood?
Robinhood, yeah, y'all don't use Robinhood. Don't do that, okay? Y'all can get in a lot of trouble. But there's a whole bunch of other alternatives that y'all can use. The one I don't even remember why I don't remember the one that I use, but there's like Vanguard. It does not matter. There is no right one to use. Yeah, Webull. They all do the exact same thing, I promise you, and they all use the exact same stock market. It does not really matter which one you go to. It's whatever, it's honestly like whatever is aesthetically pleasing to you. Like, as I will not rely on Robinhood, but it is really pretty. But that's not, but don't use it. Don't use it. I'm not promoting this at all. But the best way to budget is to do what works for you to help you see what your finances are. So where is your money going, and ensuring that a small amount of your money is to things that will help you be happy and also help you save in the future.
I definitely echo Celine when it comes to Excel. Excel, I believe Google Forms has a budget spreadsheet. Really seeing your budget in a visual format, and seeing it broken down really makes you understand what is a priority and then what is a want. And that is really the first step towards budgeting, really figuring out what you need then and now. Also, I would say understanding where your education falls into this. You are paying for your education. Tuition at USC is not the cheapest. And really formulating your goals around that. What am I putting in and what do I want to get back? So really looking for and really starting the search into careers and how the financial gain, basically your paycheck, from a prospective career will help you with those financial goals. So really thinking ahead, what industries can I get into? What positions can I apply for that will give me the financial stability that I am looking for, that I am working towards right now? So a little bit of the present, a little bit of the future. And also investing, really looking to those Roth IRAs. When you do start working the 401ks and all those options, those are incredibly important to start right really as soon as you get those benefits, because those can change over time. And so I would really recommend that. That is a work in progress for myself, really understanding that and really getting a financial advisor, or looking into those resources that can really break those down for you, because for some people that's their full-time job, and they are there to help you. And so really just accessing those resources, whether it be at USC, whether it be at your bank, or wherever you keep your money, understanding all those parameters. And yes, it is daunting. It is one of those things that cannot be done in, one night or a weekend. It is a lifelong commitment, just like any other commitment or hobby that you have. Financial literacy is something that you may not see the outcome of until you are retired, until you are much older. And even though we have that privilege when we're older, we also have it now, when it comes to really understanding a market that for so many people who are living paycheck to paycheck do not understand. And unfortunately, there is this inequality when it comes to financial literacy in our society. So for us, we can learn this to help not only our families, but other people as well and future generations to really hone in on those generational or these ways of gaining generational wealth.
Yeah, so some of my financial goals and or priorities, I would say the biggest one for me is automation. Automating my finances. Just like you automate your bills, I'm gonna automate everything, including my savings. And one thing that I loved hearing was that from Celine was that sorry, that's my dog. One thing that I love hearing from Celine was that you can put a small percentage of your money into these accounts, because like the money that you're gonna get, right? Your income is like my income, for example, is somewhat fixed. So I'm able to create these accounts, send money from my bank account to these accounts in percentage increments. That is like one of my main goals. And also making sure that the due dates are before, right? The actual the cycle date, that way it aligns with my credit and stuff like that. But as well as creating these accounts as far as like, oh, I want to take, because I do want to take like a family vacation to Japan. I've been to Japan and I haven't taken my family yet, and that's part of this automation that I'm doing, as well as creating an emergency fund. I just found out what that was, right? And a big one for me is my daughter's college savings, right? Because maybe one day she might want to go to USC, so I'm just trying to help the most that I can for the next generation. Later on, I'll probably start doing dabbling a little bit into Vanguard investing and stuff like that. But for now, that's my biggest financial goal, is creating all these accounts and automating my paychecks every month. And how do I stay motivated? Honestly, when I look at her cute little beautiful face every day, it motivates me to save more and to do more for her. That is my motivation.
I could go next. I think for me, some of my financial goals or priorities is like to set aside, like Antonio, I pretty much know or have a fixed income. So I really like budget my main necessity, which is typically my rent. So I like to ensure that is like really done. I personally have not done any investing in like any like brokerage or anything, but my main form of like boundaries I really have, I'm not really the best example because I just like ensure that I have my allotted like rent fund, and then I do have a high yield savings account with Marcus. So I will just like I have different brackets. Like for example, I can share two. I have like a vacation fund that I'm like slowly put like $10 each paycheck. I have like no vacation in plan, but not yet, but when I do have an idea of where I want to go or when I have the time to go, I have like at least like let's say $50. Not that they'll get me much far, but it's at least like it tricks my brain into knowing that like there is a possibility of me going on that trip. And I think also my other bracket I've been saving for is like not a new apartment, but my lease will be coming up. So just like I'm housing for next year, next academic school year. So it's just like making sure I'm putting like most of my savings for like a down payment and like security when you do move off campus. So those are kind of like the financial boundaries I have with myself. It's not too fixed. But yeah, and then I think how I stay motivated is like when I do, or like when I'm able to treat a friend to coffee or something like that. It like is really nice, at least for me, it's like a love language. So it stays motivated because I could buy myself some free time to be stress free, or if I know I have my rent and it's more like wiggle room, I have extra money to spend at the thrift store, anything that makes me happy. But it's been trial and error too. But yeah, those are what has been working for me. And I could pass it on to Kerry.
Thank you. I think to keep it short, I want to stay disciplined with my finances and kind of work from establishing a foundation where I can eventually start taking a little more risk, just because I think from what I've learned, I think the way to wealth is you need to take some risk, but at the same time, like you need to make sure you're covered foundationally. So whether that's, saving up for an emergency fund if something can happen, whether it be $10,000 or 6 months expenses, whichever comes first, something like that. And also like making sure that I'm taking as much advantage of my age, because I feel like I'm young and so are all of our panelists and a lot of our audience members, and time is really on our side. We can do things to really help our money grow. So I think prioritizing and, maximizing my age and the situation that I'm currently in.
Thank you, Kerry. All right, so I'm gonna ask the last question, and we're gonna take 30 seconds to answer the question of each of our panelists. What are some tips that you will give to the children family here right now, in regards to starting their financial wellness journey? And I'll start off with Celine.
It is okay to spend money on yourself. Don't feel that you can't spend money on yourself because you have to budget. Like, I promise you, like $5 for a coffee for yourself, you're going to be fine. The success of your finances is determined on your willingness to do so. And of course, still make reasonable choices and decisions with your finances, but don't ever feel bad when you decide to take care of yourself.
So one of the biggest things that I've learned, I would say, and what I could give is, believe it or not, talk to some staff, right? I'm pretty close here with some staff, and I have no problem talking to them about, money, like, oh, what do you do, and stuff like that, because I've never known anything really, and I personally love talking to people, and when that conversation first sparks, you'll be surprised on what knowledge you can gain here, right? USC is a big networking school, so I suggest you do that. Network and just talk to people and make conversation. You never know where it might lead.
Nettie, can you go next?
Yes, of course. I think for me, a tip I would give to the children family watching right now is to just have some grace, like for yourself. Like this is a journey that is not starting today and is ending tomorrow. This is like a lifetime of journey, and many times like it could be you can overwhelm yourself with how much you're reading or digesting. But I think it's to have more of a positive outlook. Like Celine said, everything is what you make out of it. And I think like it won't come easy. Like I said, it's trial and error, but definitely there's like support in your capital. Maybe your friends have opened up to talking about it. They've shared their struggles. And I think a lot of it too is this year I've started like suggesting more like cost-free activities, because I don't like I'm starting to realize like a hangout shouldn't be catching up like every month like to get expensive dinner. If anything, it could literally be like going with your friends to Trader Joe's and doing your groceries together. Like it doesn't have to be expensive. Going on a hike is free. Anything like going to the beach. I think it's just like utilizing I guess like your hangout time and trying to make it cost effective so that you can put that money on a trip if you want, or for rent, for next month's rent, like saving for other months' rents. Because truthfully, you never know what can come into your life, and a lot of times things do come unexpectedly. Like Antonio said, like the gas, like him not expecting to pay for like the gas that time. But I mean, yeah. So I would think like choosing things that aren't as cost expensive. But yeah, that's my tip. And then I could pass it on to sorry. Sorry, Kerry.
I'll keep it brief, but I think the tips I can give is in the form of like learning and resources that you guys might be able to use. So I'll just list the ones that I use because these are the ones that kind of have changed my life. So for budgeting, I use You Need a Budget, or there's also Rocket Money and Monarch Money in Excel. So whatever works for you. For investing, I think that John Bogle is the founder of the mutual fund. So if you want something to read on kind of starting to get the basics of investing down, I recommend John Bogle's books, as well as, whether it be Vanguard, Fidelity, Charles Schwab, any brokers you can look at. And then I watch a lot of YouTube. So a lot of content creators that have helped me learn about finances and keep myself educated have been like the money guys who talk about kind of wealth building by different ages, as well as Caleb Hammer. He kind of goes into looking at people's specific financial situations and like trying to get people out of debt. As well as Dave Ramsey, who's really more on the conservative side, and he tries to really like eliminate all of that. And so kind of see what content works for you and start exploring.
That's really great advice. I would say, as cliche as it may sound, start today. Start researching today. If you have any money set aside, look into high yield savings accounts. I use SoFi, and really learn how to make your money work for you. Again, another cliche line, but understanding that finding someone you trust to advise you as you grow and your journey is very important. Kerry recommended some great YouTube channels, but also the internet's a really big place, and there might be some not so reputable advice columns out there. And it really is up to you to kind of gauge what works for you, and how to move forward from there. So really starting today, starting small, and understanding that you're not going to be able to do it all at once, but that if you keep doing small things here and there, saving things here, starting an account or a fund for something that you want in the future, to show that you are progressing, even if it may not seem like you are.
Thank you, Antoinette. Yes, great resources. I posted one of my resource guide on the chat. You should all have access to it. It does have a few social medias of what have been mentioned. I personally believe Caleb is toxic, but I do sometimes watch it. And Robinhood is okay, you guys. Robinhood is okay. Anyways, and so again, thank you all for being here. I know there's some questions in the chat, and I hope we were able to answer some of them. If our panelists have time to just continue to answer them, that would be great. If not, I do want to give space, for all of you to give affirmations, whether that's through the chat. But yeah, Sarah, would you like to say anything else?
No, I believe we're all set. Thank you all so much for coming out, and fight on.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.